She held up a stack of white flashcards to her webcam, and in that moment, she became immortal. Not in the way she wanted. Not in the way anyone should ever become immortal. Amanda Todd was 15 years old when she recorded that video, and she had no idea that millions of people would watch her silent confession, her desperate plea, written in black marker on cards she probably bought at a dollar store. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You didn't click on this video to hear about flashcards. You clicked because you saw the word murder in the title, and something about that word made you pause your scrolling. Good. I need you to pause. I need you to stay. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just another true crime story you can consume and forget. This is the story of how an entire system murdered a child in slow motion while everyone watched, and how justice finally came for the man who started it all. But here's what they don't tell you in the headlines. Here's what the news reports gloss over. Amanda Todd didn't just die, she was hunted. For 3 years, across multiple cities, through countless schools, she was hunted by a predator so sophisticated, so calculating, that law enforcement on 3 continents couldn't catch him. And the weapon he used? It wasn't a knife, it wasn't a gun, it was a photograph. A single photograph that became a bomb that detonated over and over again, destroying everything in Amanda's life until she had nothing left. This is the story of that photograph, of the monster who wielded it, and of the mother who refused to let her daughter become just another statistic. This is the murder of Amanda Todd. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. If you've ever been bullied, if you've ever felt alone, if you've ever wondered why the world seems so cruel to the most vulnerable among us, then this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now, not because I need the numbers, but because stories like this need to be told, and the more people who hear them, the harder it becomes for predators to hide in the shadows. Share this video with someone you love, because the person you share it with might need to hear this more than you know. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to a time before the flashcards, before the viral video, before the world knew her name. Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. It's one of those Canadian suburbs that looks exactly like you'd imagine. Tree-lined streets, modest homes, the kind of place where kids ride their bikes until the streetlights come on. Amanda Todd grew up in this quiet corner of the world, the daughter of Carol Todd, a teacher, and Norm Todd, a businessman. They divorced when Amanda was young, but they remained committed to co-parenting, to giving their daughter the best life possible. And for a while, it worked. Amanda was bright, curious, creative. She loved to sing, had a voice that could fill a room. She was the kind of kid who made friends easily, who lit up when she walked into a space. She was also trusting, painfully, beautifully trusting in the way that only children can be. She believed that people were good, that the world was safe, that nothing truly terrible could happen to someone like her in a place like this. She was wrong. In 2009, Amanda was 12 years old, navigating that awkward transition from childhood to adolescence. Like millions of kids her age, she discovered the internet as a social space, a place where she could meet new people, explore new identities, feel grown up and sophisticated. She started using video chat websites, platforms, where strangers could connect through their webcams. It seemed harmless. It seemed fun. She had no way of knowing that predators had turned these platforms into hunting grounds, that men with patience and skill were watching, waiting, looking for girls exactly like her. Girls who were curious. Girls who wanted to feel special. Girls who didn't yet understand that some people wear masks made of kindness to hide their true faces. Amanda met someone on one of these platforms. A stranger who seemed nice, who complimented her, who made her feel seen and important. The stranger told her she was beautiful. The stranger told her she was mature for her age. The stranger told her things that a 12-year-old girl, hungry for validation and unsure of her place in the world, desperately wanted to hear. And then the stranger made a request. It seemed small at the time, just a moment, just a flash. Amanda lifted her shirt for the webcam. She was 12 years old. She didn't understand what she was doing. She didn't understand that on the other side of that webcam, a monster was pressing record. She didn't understand that this single moment, this one mistake born of naivety and the universal human desire to be liked, would define the next 3 years of her life. She didn't understand that she had just handed a weapon to someone who would use it to destroy her. The stranger captured the image and then disappeared. For a while, nothing happened. Amanda probably tried to forget about it, probably told herself it was no big deal, probably buried the memory under homework and sleepovers and all the normal activities of a 7th grade girl. But the stranger hadn't forgotten. The stranger was patient. The stranger was building a file, collecting information, learning everything about Amanda Todd, her school, her friends, her family, her social media accounts. The stranger was preparing for a hunt. 1 year later, Amanda received a message. It came through Facebook, from an account she didn't recognize. The message contained the image, her image, the one she had tried to forget, and beneath the image a demand. The stranger wanted more. If Amanda didn't provide more photographs, more videos, more of herself, the stranger would send that image to everyone she knew, her parents, her teachers, her friends, everyone. Amanda was 13 years old and she was being blackmailed by a faceless entity hiding somewhere in the vast darkness of the internet. She was terrified. She was ashamed. She was alone. She couldn't tell her parents because that would mean admitting what she had done. She couldn't tell her friends because they might think she was disgusting, damaged, ruined. She couldn't tell the police because she didn't know who this person was or where they were or if anyone could even do anything about it. So she did what the stranger asked. She gave them more. And the stranger recorded it all, adding to the collection, building the arsenal that would be used against her again and again and again. This is how grooming works. This is how predators operate. They don't grab children off the street. They don't need to. They find vulnerable kids online, build trust, extract compromising material, and then use that material as leverage to extract more. It's a machine designed to trap children, and once you're caught in it, escape seems impossible. Amanda was caught. The stranger who had captured her wasn't just some random creep looking for cheap thrills. As investigators would later discover, he was running an industrial-scale operation, targeting dozens of girls across multiple countries, using the same techniques over and over. He was a professional predator, and Amanda Todd was just one of his victims. But she was the one who would become the symbol. She was the one whose story would change everything. She just didn't know it yet. The stranger kept their promise. In December 2010, just before Christmas, the image was sent to everyone. Amanda was in 8th grade, 14 years old, still trying to navigate the impossible situation she found herself in, when suddenly everyone knew. Her classmates, her teachers, her parents. The image spread through her school like wildfire, passed from phone to phone, whispered about in hallways, laughed at during lunch. Amanda Todd went from being a normal teenager to being the girl in that picture overnight. The shame was immediate and overwhelming. Imagine being 14 years old and walking into school knowing that everyone you see has seen you at your most vulnerable, your most exposed. Imagine the looks, the whispers, the way conversations stop when you enter a room. Imagine your phone buzzing constantly with messages from people calling you names, telling you you're worthless, telling you that you deserve whatever happens to you. Amanda didn't have to imagine it, she lived it. I need to pause here and say something important. Amanda Todd made a mistake. She was a child who made a mistake that children have been making since the dawn of human history. The only difference is that in the digital age, mistakes are recorded, stored, and distributed. They become permanent in ways that mistakes never used to be, but the mistake was hers, a minor's error in judgment. The crime belonged entirely to the man who exploited her, who recorded her, who distributed the image, who weaponized her naivety against her. Never forget that. Never let anyone tell you that Amanda Todd brought this on herself. She was a child. He was a predator. End of story. After the image spread, Amanda's life collapsed. Her friends abandoned her, unable or unwilling to be associated with the girl at the center of the scandal. She started receiving threats. Boys at school made crude comments about what they wanted to do to her. Girls called her names that I won't repeat here. The bullying was relentless, coming from every direction, both online and offline. Amanda withdrew. She stopped going to school. She stopped leaving her house. She fell into a depression so deep that her parents didn't know how to reach her. Carol Todd watched her daughter disappear, watched the light go out in her eyes, and felt powerless to stop it. She took Amanda to doctors, to therapists, to anyone who might be able to help. But how do you treat a wound that keeps being reopened? How do you heal when the source of the trauma is still out there, still watching, still waiting? The family decided to move. It was the only solution they could think of. Maybe if Amanda could start fresh somewhere new, somewhere no one knew her history, she could rebuild her life. They moved to a different city, enrolled Amanda in a new school, and prayed that this nightmare was finally over. It wasn't. The stranger was watching. The stranger had never stopped watching. Within weeks of Amanda's arrival at her new school, students began receiving messages, anonymous messages, messages containing the image. The stranger had tracked Amanda to her new home, her new school, her new life, and had detonated the bomb all over again. Carol Todd would later describe this period as psychological torture, and she wasn't exaggerating. Every time Amanda tried to escape, every time she dared to hope that maybe this time things would be different, the stranger pulled her back into hell. Think about that for a moment. Think about being 15 years old and realizing that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you cannot escape. Your past follows you like a shadow, and someone out there is making sure it always will. The hopelessness of that situation is almost impossible for adults to comprehend. let alone a teenager whose brain is still developing, whose emotional resources are limited, whose entire world consists of school and friends and the approval of her peers. Amanda Todd was being systematically destroyed, and the world was just watching. During this period, Amanda made her first suicide attempt. She drank bleach. Think about the level of despair required to put something that caustic, that painful, that dangerous into your own body. She survived, but even this became fuel for her tormentors. Students at school made jokes about her attempt. They told her she should have tried harder. They told her she should just finish the job. This is what we do to our children. This is what we allow to happen in our schools, in our communities, in our digital spaces. We let the wounded be devoured by the cruel, and then we wonder why they don't survive. Amanda was hospitalized for a time, treated for her depression and anxiety, given medications and therapy sessions and all the clinical interventions that modern medicine has to offer. But when she returned to the world, everything was exactly the same. The stranger was still out there. The image was still circulating. The bullies were still waiting. And Amanda was running out of places to run. Where were the adults? Where were the people who were supposed to protect her? This is the question that haunted Carol Todd, that haunts me as I research this case, that should haunt every single person watching this video. Amanda Todd was being stalked and harassed by an online predator. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't paranoia. The family had evidence. They had the messages, the threats, the proof that someone was deliberately and systematically targeting their daughter. They went to the police, they went to the RCMP, they went to the school administrators. They begged for help. And what did they get? Nothing. I need you to understand how this happened because it's crucial to understanding why Amanda Todd died. In 2010, 2011, 2012, law enforcement was woefully unprepared to deal with crimes that happened online. There was no clear jurisdiction. If the predator was in another country, Canadian police had limited ability to pursue him. There were no specialized cybercrime units equipped to handle this kind of stalking. There were no laws specifically designed to address the distribution of intimate images without consent. The legal system was built for a world that no longer existed, and Amanda Todd fell through every crack. The schools were no better. When Amanda reported the bullying, when her parents demanded that something be done, the schools shrugged their shoulders. What could they do? The harassment was happening online, outside school hours, on platforms they had no control over. They couldn't monitor every student's social media. They couldn't prevent people from sharing images. They couldn't protect Amanda from the anonymous stranger who was orchestrating her destruction, or at least that's what they claimed. The truth is that schools can do plenty. They can create cultures of accountability. They can implement anti-bullying programs that actually work. They can intervene when they see a student being targeted. They can reach out to families, provide resources, take the side of the victim instead of the side of institutional convenience. But that requires effort, resources, commitment. It's easier to look the other way. So Amanda Todd was left to fight alone. A child, battling an adult predator with sophisticated technical skills, battling an entire student body that had decided she was a target, battling depression and anxiety and trauma, battling a system that had failed her at every turn. And through it all, she kept trying. That's what breaks my heart about this story. Amanda never gave up. She kept moving to new schools, kept trying to make new friends, kept hoping that tomorrow would be better than today. She started a YouTube channel where she posted covers of songs she loved, her voice clear and sweet, a window into who she could have been if the world had been kinder. She was fighting for her life, even when the fight seemed hopeless. In September 2012, Amanda posted a different kind of video. She sat in front of her webcam, but this time she didn't sing. Instead, she held up flashcards, one after another, telling her story in handwritten words while a haunting song played in the background. She wrote about the stranger who had captured her image. She wrote about the blackmail and the bullying. She wrote about her suicide attempt, about the bleach, about the kids who mocked her for surviving. She wrote about feeling alone, about losing hope, about wanting to die. She ended with a card that simply said, "I have nobody. I need someone." The video was called "My Story, Struggling, Bullying, Suicide, Self-Harm." Amanda was reaching out to the world, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear her. And people did hear her. The video went viral. Millions of people watched Amanda's silent confession, felt their hearts break for this girl they had never met, shared her story on their social media feeds, and commented with messages of support and encouragement. For a brief moment, Amanda was surrounded by love. But the stranger saw the video too, and the bully saw the video too. And instead of bringing help, the viral attention brought more harassment. More people shared the image. More people sent cruel messages. More people told Amanda Todd to kill herself. She had opened her heart to the world, and the world had responded with cruelty. Not everyone, not even most people, but enough people. More than enough. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. What would you have done? If you were Amanda's classmate, and you saw the image being shared, and you heard the whispers in the hallway, would you have spoken up? Would you have sat with her at lunch? Would you have told the bullies to stop? Or would you have looked the other way, afraid that defending her would make you a target too? Leave your answer in the comments below. Be honest. This isn't about judgment. It's about understanding how ordinary people become complicit in extraordinary cruelty. The final months of Amanda Todd's life were a descent into deeper and deeper isolation. The video had brought a flood of attention, but attention isn't the same as help. Amanda was still being stalked by the stranger, still being harassed by classmates, still battling the depression that had become her constant companion. She was on medication, in therapy, doing everything she was supposed to do, but the external circumstances of her life remained unchanged. You can give someone all the mental health support in the world, but if you don't address the source of their trauma, you're just putting a bandage on a wound that keeps being reopened. Carol Todd watched her daughter struggle and felt the frustration of a parent who would do anything to help, but doesn't know how. She later said that Amanda had good days and bad days, that there were moments when she seemed like her old self, laughing and singing and making plans for the future, and moments when she couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of everything was simply too heavy to carry. Carol never gave up on her daughter. She kept fighting, kept advocating, kept trying to find solutions that the system refused to provide. But she couldn't watch Amanda every second of every day. She couldn't get inside her daughter's head and rewire the despair that had taken root there. she couldn't protect Amanda from herself. During this period, Amanda formed a relationship with a boy at one of her schools. For a while, it seemed like maybe this was the connection she needed, the lifeline that would pull her back from the edge. But the relationship was complicated, troubled, not the healthy connection that Amanda deserved. The boy was apparently already involved with another girl, and when that girl found out about Amanda, she orchestrated a confrontation. Amanda was lured to a meeting place where she was physically attacked by a group of students while others watched and filmed. She was beaten, left on the ground, humiliated once again while her peers recorded her suffering for their own entertainment. After the attack, Amanda attempted suicide again, this time by taking pills. I want you to sit with that for a moment. This girl was attacked by a group of her peers, filmed while being beaten, and then attempted to take her own life. And the system still didn't protect her. The attackers faced minimal consequences. The video of the assault circulated online, adding to Amanda's humiliation. The stranger, whoever he was still out there, still watching, probably celebrating his latest victory. Amanda was fighting a war on multiple fronts, and she was losing on all of them. She changed schools again. This time she went to a school in Port Coquitlam, closer to her mother's home, hoping that maybe this time would be different. And for a brief period, it seemed like it might be. Amanda started to stabilize. She made a few tentative friendships. She continued to post videos, to sing, to try to find her voice in a world that seemed determined to silence her. She was taking new medication that seemed to help with her mood. She was engaging with therapy, doing the work, fighting to survive. Carol Todd allowed herself to hope that maybe the worst was over, that maybe her daughter had turned a corner. She was wrong. October 10th, 2012, a Wednesday. Amanda went to school that morning like any other day. She seemed okay, not great, but okay. She came home in the afternoon and Carol left for a work meeting, expecting to see her daughter later that evening. It was a normal day in a household that had experienced so few normal days in the past 3 years. There was no indication that anything was wrong, no final goodbye, no warning signs that Amanda had made a decision. This is one of the cruelest aspects of suicide. It often comes without warning, a sudden storm that sweeps in and destroys everything before anyone can take shelter. When Carol returned home that evening, she found Amanda. Her daughter was gone, 15 years old, 3 years of torture. And now it was over. I'm not going to describe the details of what Carol found that day. Some things are too intimate, too painful, too raw to share with strangers on the internet. What I will tell you is that Carol Todd's world ended in that moment. The daughter she had fought so hard to protect, the child she had loved with everything she had, was gone. All the therapy, all the medication, all the moving and fighting and hoping and praying had not been enough. The predator had won. The bullies had won. The system that had failed Amanda at every turn had finally failed her completely. The news of Amanda's death spread quickly. The video she had posted a month earlier, the one with the flashcards, suddenly found new life as it was shared across social media platforms, news websites, and television broadcasts around the world. People who had never heard of Amanda Todd suddenly knew her story, felt her pain, mourned her death. The response was overwhelming. Vigils were held in cities across Canada and around the world. Hashtags trended globally. Politicians issued statements. The conversation about cyberbullying, about online predators, about the failure of institutions to protect vulnerable children, suddenly became unavoidable. But for Carol Todd, none of this mattered. Her daughter was dead. The outpouring of public grief might mean something to the world, but it couldn't bring Amanda back. It couldn't undo the years of torment. It couldn't give Carol the chance to hold her daughter one more time, to tell her that everything was going to be okay, to find some way to save her. Amanda Todd was gone, and all that remained was the question of why. Why did this happen? Why was a child allowed to be hunted for 3 years while everyone watched? Why did the police fail to stop the predator? Why did the schools fail to stop the bullying? Why did the world fail to stop Amanda from taking her own life? These questions haunted Carol Todd in the days, weeks, and months after her daughter's death, but they also drove her forward. Because Carol Todd decided that her daughter's death would not be in vain. Amanda's story would be told. The people who had failed her would be held accountable, and the predator who had started it all would be found and brought to justice. This is where our story takes a turn. Because if you thought this was just a tragedy, if you thought Amanda Todd was just another victim swallowed up by the cruelty of the world, you were wrong. Amanda's death was not the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of a mother's crusade. The beginning of a global movement. And the beginning of the hunt for the monster who had destroyed her daughter. In the weeks following Amanda's death, pressure mounted on law enforcement to find the person responsible for stalking and tormenting her. The RCMP, which had done so little while Amanda was alive, suddenly found itself under intense scrutiny. How could they have allowed this to happen? Why hadn't they caught this predator? What were they doing to make sure this never happened again? The public demanded answers, and for once, the authorities had to provide them. An international investigation was launched. The FBI was brought in. Interpol was consulted. Digital forensics experts began the painstaking work of tracing the messages, the images, the digital breadcrumbs that the predator had left behind. It was a massive undertaking, complicated by the fact that the stalker had used sophisticated tools to hide his identity and location. He had routed his communications through multiple servers, used anonymous accounts, covered his tracks with the skill of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. But he had made mistakes. They all make mistakes, and investigators were determined to find them. Meanwhile, Carol Todd was transforming her grief into action. She established the Amanda Todd Legacy Society, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting young people struggling with mental health issues, promoting digital literacy, and creating safer online spaces. She began speaking publicly about her daughter's story, appearing at schools, conferences, and media events, forcing people to confront the reality of cyberbullying and online exploitation. She became an advocate, a warrior, a mother who refused to let her daughter be forgotten. The investigation into Amanda's stalker continued for 2 years. 2 years of dead ends and false leads and frustrating bureaucratic obstacles. But investigators never gave up. They knew they were dealing with a serial predator, someone who had likely victimized dozens of other children, someone who would continue to victimize children until he was stopped. This wasn't just about getting justice for Amanda Todd. It was about protecting every other potential victim still out there. In January 2014, the breakthrough came. Dutch police, working in coordination with Canadian and American investigators, arrested a 35-year-old man named Aydin Coban in the Netherlands. Coban was a citizen of the Netherlands with Turkish origins, and he had been under investigation by Dutch authorities for similar crimes against children in their country. When investigators examined his computers, they found evidence linking him to dozens of victims across multiple continents. And among that evidence, they found Amanda Todd. Carol Todd later described the moment she learned of the arrest as bittersweet. Finally, after all these years, they had found him. They had found the monster who had destroyed her daughter. But no arrest could bring Amanda back. No trial could undo what had been done. Justice, Carol learned, is not the same as healing. It's just the beginning. Who was Aydin Coban? What kind of person spends their time hunting children online, extracting compromising material, and using it to torture them? As investigators dug into his background, a picture emerged of a man who had dedicated his life to victimizing the young and the vulnerable. Coban was not a one-time offender who had made a terrible mistake. He was a predator who had industrialized the process of child exploitation. Coban operated by targeting young people on video chat platforms, using fake identities and manipulative techniques to build trust. He would present himself as a peer, someone the victim could relate to, someone who understood them. He was patient, charming, skilled at reading his targets and giving them exactly what they wanted to hear. Once he had established a relationship, he would coax them into exposing themselves on camera, recording everything for later use. Then the blackmail would begin. More images, more videos, more material for his collection. If the victim refused or tried to escape, he would make good on his threats, sending the compromising material to the victim's family, friends, and classmates. It was a cycle designed to trap children in an endless nightmare of shame and exploitation. Investigators identified at least 34 victims across multiple countries, though the actual number was likely much higher. Many victims never came forward, too ashamed or too frightened to report what had happened to them. Coban had been doing this for years, perfecting his techniques, expanding his operation, leaving a trail of traumatized children in his wake. Amanda Todd was one of many, but because of her video, because of her mother's advocacy, because of the global attention her death had generated, she became the symbol of all of them. The legal process that followed was complicated and lengthy. Coban was first tried in the Netherlands in 2017 on charges related to his Dutch victims. He was convicted of internet fraud, extortion, and other offenses, and sentenced to nearly 11 years in Dutch prison. But Canadian authorities were determined to bring him to justice in their country as well, to make him answer for what he had done to Amanda Todd. The extradition process took years, complicated by legal challenges and the need to navigate between two different justice systems. But Carol Todd was patient. She had waited this long. She could wait a little longer. During this period, the world began to change. Amanda's story had sparked a global conversation about cyberbullying and online safety. Laws were passed in Canada and other countries, criminalizing the non-consensual distribution of intimate images. Schools implemented anti-bullying programs. Social media platforms improved their reporting mechanisms for harassment and exploitation. The Amanda Todd Legacy Society expanded its reach, providing resources and support to thousands of young people. Amanda's death, while tragic beyond words, had catalyzed a movement that was saving lives. Carol Todd could take some comfort in knowing that her daughter's suffering had meaning, that it was being transformed into something positive. But justice still needed to be served. Coban still needed to answer for Amanda's death, and Carol Todd was not going to rest until he did. In June 2022, nearly a decade after Amanda's death, Aydin Coban was finally extradited to Canada to face trial. He was charged with extortion, harassment, communication with a young person for the purpose of obtaining sexual services, and possession and distribution of child pornography. The trial was held in New Westminster, British Columbia, not far from the communities where Amanda had lived and died. Carol Todd attended every day, sitting in the courtroom, watching the man who had destroyed her daughter finally face accountability. The trial was difficult. Prosecutors presented evidence of Coban's systematic targeting of Amanda, his persistent harassment across multiple years and multiple cities, his calculated destruction of a child's life for his own gratification. They played portions of Amanda's flashcard video, her silent testimony from beyond the grave. They presented digital evidence linking Coban to the messages Amanda had received, the images that had been distributed, the campaign of terror that had driven her to take her own life. Coban's defense attempted to create doubt, to argue that the evidence didn't conclusively prove he was responsible for Amanda's torment. But the evidence was overwhelming. The digital trail led directly to him. His methods matched perfectly with what Amanda had described in her video. Victim after victim had identified him as their tormentor. There was no reasonable doubt left. In August 2022, the verdict came. Guilty. Aydin Coban was found guilty on all counts related to Amanda Todd. The judge described his crimes as unrelenting and persistent, noting that he had shown no remorse for the suffering he had caused. Coban was sentenced to 13 years in Canadian prison, to be served after the completion of his Dutch sentence. Combined with his previous conviction, he would spend decades behind bars. Carol Todd made a statement after the verdict. She said that this was not a victory, because no verdict could bring Amanda back. But it was justice. It was accountability. It was a message to every predator hiding in the shadows of the internet that they could be found, that they would be caught, that their victims would not be forgotten. And it was a message to every child suffering in silence that they were not alone, that people were fighting for them, that there was hope even in the darkest moments. As I tell you this, I want you to remember something. This outcome was not guaranteed. For years, it seemed like Coban would never be caught, never face consequences for what he had done. The system that had failed Amanda in life nearly failed her in death as well. Justice only came because people refused to give up, because investigators kept searching, because Carol Todd kept fighting, because the world kept watching. Justice required sustained effort, relentless pressure, the refusal to accept that some crimes go unpunished. Remember that? Remember that justice doesn't just happen, it has to be fought for. Amanda Todd has been gone for more than a decade now. In that time, the world has changed in ways she never could have imagined. Smartphones are everywhere. Social media platforms have evolved and multiplied. The internet has become even more central to the lives of young people. And the predators have evolved too, finding new techniques, new platforms, new ways to exploit the vulnerable. The fight that Amanda symbolized is far from over. In many ways, it's just beginning. But something else has happened in the years since Amanda's death. Her story has saved lives. Countless young people have watched her video and recognized their own struggles in her words. They have reached out for help when they might otherwise have suffered in silence. They have reported predators instead of giving in to their demands. They have supported friends who were being bullied instead of looking the other way. Amanda's message, scrawled on those flashcards in black marker, has reached millions of people around the world and touched hearts that she never knew existed. Carol Todd has dedicated her life to ensuring that this legacy continues. Through the Amanda Todd Legacy Society and countless speaking engagements, she has become one of the world's leading advocates for youth mental health and online safety. She speaks with a clarity and compassion that only someone who has lived through tragedy can possess. She doesn't sugarcoat the reality of what happened to her daughter, doesn't pretend that awareness campaigns are enough to solve complex problems. But she also doesn't despair. She believes in young people, believes in their resilience, believes in their capacity to create a kinder world than the one her daughter experienced. The conversation about online safety has matured since 2012. We now understand that technology alone cannot protect children from predators. It requires education, both for young people and for the adults who care for them. It requires legislation that gives law enforcement the tools they need to investigate crimes that cross borders. It requires platforms that take their responsibility to protect users seriously. And it requires communities that refuse to tolerate bullying, that stand with the vulnerable instead of against them. None of these changes happen automatically. They require advocacy, pressure, the sustained commitment of people who believe that we can do better. Amanda Todd never got to see the change she inspired. She never got to grow up to fall in love, to pursue her dreams of singing. She never got to meet the people whose lives she saved, to hear them say thank you, to know that her suffering had meaning. That's the tragedy at the heart of this story, the hole that can never be filled, the loss that can never be recovered. But her voice lives on. Every time someone watches her video, every time someone learns her story, every time someone decides to be kind instead of cruel, Amanda Todd is still speaking. Her flashcards still carry their message. Her silent plea still echoes across the years. I have nobody. I need someone. We are the someone. All of us, every person watching this video, every person who shares it, every person who looks at the world and decides that we can't keep failing our children the way we failed Amanda Todd. We are the answer to her plea, and we have work to do. Chapter 10, The Victory That Matters. So how does this story end? I promised you at the beginning that it would end well, with victory and redemption and justice. And in many ways, it does. Aydin Coban is in prison, where he will remain for years to come. The laws that failed Amanda have been strengthened. The awareness that didn't exist has been raised. The legacy that might have been forgotten burns brighter than ever. Carol Todd, who lost everything, has found purpose in her loss, transforming tragedy into advocacy that touches lives around the world. But I'm going to be honest with you. The victory is incomplete. It will always be incomplete because Amanda Todd is still gone. A girl who should have lived a full life, who should have sung and laughed and loved and grown old, was destroyed by cruelty that should never have been allowed to exist. No amount of justice, no amount of awareness, no amount of legacy can bring her back. That loss is permanent, irreversible, a wound that will never fully heal. And yet there is victory here. The victory is in the lives saved, the children protected, the conversation started. The victory is in every person who saw Amanda's story and chose compassion over cruelty. The victory is in the fact that we're talking about this right now, you and me, refusing to let Amanda be forgotten, refusing to accept a world where predators operate with impunity and children suffer in silence. The victory is in the simple, profound truth that Amanda Todd's life mattered. It mattered to her mother. It mattered to the people she touched, and it matters to the future, to the world we're building together, to the children who will grow up safer because of what she endured. I think about Amanda sometimes, about who she would be today if she had survived. She would be in her late 20s now, probably pursuing her music, maybe working with young people, definitely still fighting the battles that she fought alone as a teenager. I think she would be proud of her mother. I think she would be amazed by the impact her story has had. I think she would still be singing. But I also think about the Amanda Todds who are out there right now, the kids being bullied, being exploited, being failed by the systems that are supposed to protect them. They're watching videos like this one, wondering if anyone sees them, wondering if anyone cares, wondering if there's any point in fighting when the fight seems so hopeless. To those kids, I want to say this directly. You matter. Your pain is real. And there are people who will fight for you even when it feels like you're completely alone. Amanda Todd reached out to the world through a stack of flashcards and a webcam. I'm reaching out to you through this video. The medium is different, but the message is the same. You are not alone. There is help. There is hope. And there are people who believe in you, even if we've never met, even if we don't know your name. This is the murder of Amanda Todd. But it's also the story of her triumph, because she was silenced, but her voice is louder than ever. She was isolated, but millions now stand with her. She was destroyed. But from her destruction, something beautiful and lasting has been built. That is the victory that matters. That is the redemption that her death made possible. That is the love that endures. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for refusing to scroll past someone else's pain. Now I have one more request. Share this video, not for me, but for the next Amanda, the one who's out there right now, alone in her room, holding on to hope by her fingertips. Share this video because it might reach her. And subscribe to this channel because there are more stories like this, stories that need to be told, stories that can change lives. Amanda Todd was 15 years old when she died. She deserved better from all of us. Let's make sure we give better to those who come after her. Her name was Amanda Todd. She needed someone. Let's be that someone.